Well, hey there, kiddos. Here is your video for four-term grouping, which is what we're going to be talking about. Last night, your video was all about GCF and how to factor using that greatest common factor, and so we walked through all of that. So now we're going to do something called four-term grouping, which is exactly what it sounds like. We're going to have four terms, and we're going to group in order to factor them, and it's going to look a lot like yesterday, except there's two methods you can use. If you're going to do four-term grouping, you can use the box method, which is just backwards from what we did when we used the box method to multiply, or you can group, and I'm going to show you both ways. This first example we're going to do twice, once with the box method, once with the grouping method, so you can see they give you the same answer. Then we'll try a couple more going back and forth, box method, grouping method, and then when you do your assignment, you can choose the one that you like the best. So for the box method, when we did this before, we filled out what we were multiplying out here on the outside of the box, and then we multiplied them and filled the inside of the box to get our answer. Now we're working backwards, so we're going to fill the inside of the box and then work backwards to find out what goes outside the box. So I'm going to take my polynomial here and I'm going to fill in the box. 3x cubed goes in this top left corner. The next term, negative 4x squared, goes in the top right. Then the 6x goes in the bottom left, and the minus 8 goes in the bottom right. And so here's what my box looks like. Everything is filled in. And now I'm going to do what I did yesterday, and I'm going to use greatest common factor to factor this. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go one row at a time and then one column at a time. So right now, all I'm going to do is just this row, this 3x to the third and this negative 4x squared. What I'm going to do, instead of drawing out my t's and all of that like yesterday, I'm just going to look at what I have. I've got a 3 and a 4. I'm not going to worry about the negative because both of these numbers aren't negative. So I'm just going to look at the numbers, 3 and 4. Well, the biggest number that will go into both of those is a 1. 1's the only thing that will divide both 3 and 4 evenly. So I have to factor out a 1. Now I have my variables. I've got x cubed and x squared. And so when I look at that, if you want to do it like we did yesterday, here's your x cubed, here's your x squared, and we're going to circle x's until we run out. And you see that I circled two x's in each one, so they have an x squared in common. Now we'll do the bottom row. Down here I've got a 6x and an 8. Well, the numbers first. The biggest number that will go into both 6 and 8 evenly is a 2, and that's the only thing they have in common because this doesn't have an x. So now we'll do columns. This first column right here, the 3x to the third and the 6x, well, the biggest number that will go into both 3 and 6 is going to be a 3. And then if I look at this again, like I line up my x's like I did before, I have x cubed and x, and so they have one x in common. And then I'm going to do this row, and both of these numbers, sorry, this is a column, both of these numbers are negative, which means my greatest common factor is also going to be negative because they have a negative in common. And then the biggest number that goes into both 4 and 8 is going to be 4, and that's all they share because they don't both have a variable. And so what I have done is I have discovered that if this is my answer, then these are the two things I had to multiply to get there. So those are my factors. So my answer becomes 1x squared plus 2 from this side of the box times 3x minus 4 from up here, this part of the box. Now if you chose to write it the other way, and so you did the 3x minus 4 first and then the x squared plus 2 second, these mean the same thing. They're just flip-flopped. Multiplication order doesn't matter, so you can change the order. Just make sure you keep the pieces together. The 3x and the minus 4 go together. So now we're going to do this same problem, but we're going to use the grouping method. And so grouping method is just like what it sounds. We have four terms. You have to have an even number of terms to do the grouping method. Otherwise, you don't have anything to, you can't group. So I have an even number of terms. I got 4 of them, so I'm going to group. The first 2 are going to go in a group together. The second 2 are going to go in a group together. Now I'm going to do what I did yesterday. I'm going to take this first group, ignore the second one for now, just this first group. And I'm going to do what I did yesterday. I'm going to find the greatest common factor and do what's left. So I'm going to draw my t's just like yesterday. And I'm going to list all my factors. So all the factors are 3, 1, and 3. That's it. All the factors are 4, 1 and 4, 2 and 2. And then this one has 3 x's, and this one has 2. And so now I'm going to find the biggest number that these two have in common. Well, it's a 1. I'll cross out any other pairs. And then I'll circle x's till I can't circle anymore. So I have two x's in common. So what they have is in common is a 1 and an x squared. Then in parentheses, I will put what's left. Well, there was a 3 and an x left here. There's a minus sign, so I'm going to put minus, and there was a 4 left here. We're done with that one. Now we'll do this other one, and I'm going to change colors. For this one, I'll do the same thing. I'm going to draw my t's, and I'm going to list my factors. So all the factors of 6, 1 and 6, 2 and 3. Factors of 8, 1 and 8, 2 and 4, and then this one has an x. Well, the biggest number they have in common is this 2. And so I'm going to, and that's all they have in common, because they don't both have an x. So cross out your pairs that you didn't use. And it was positive, so I'm going to put plus 2. Then I'm going to write down what's left. So right here, I have a 3 and an x left. There was a minus sign up here, so it's minus, and then I have a 4 left. And if you look at what is still remaining, what you should notice is that what's in parentheses matches. That's because if you'll remember when we multiplied before and we did distributive property, I had to multiply, if I were going to multiply these together, I have to multiply this x squared times both of these, and then I had to multiply this 2 times both of these. And so that's basically what this is doing, but it's an instant check. If you do the grouping method and the stuff that's in parentheses matches, that means you're good. You've done what you were supposed to do, it's correct. If the stuff in parentheses doesn't match, you've made a mistake, and we'll deal with that when we get to it. But what that tells me is that one of my factors is 3x minus 4. The other factor is what's not in parentheses, which is this x squared plus 2. And if you look, these two factors match the factors from over here. So there's the box and the grouping method. We're going to do a couple more examples, one with the box, one with the grouping, and then when you come to class, you can decide which one you like the best. So example 2 here, we're going to use the box method for it. So we're going to draw our box and then fill it in. So first things first, we have to draw a box, and I can count 1, 2, 3, 4 terms, which means I need 4 squares in my box. Then I'm going to fill it in. 7x cubed, 2x squared, 28x, and 8. And then I'm just going to go do my greatest common factor for each little part. This row right here, the biggest number that will go into both 7 and 2 is just a 1, because both of those are prime numbers. And then x cubed and x squared means they have an x squared in common. This bottom row down here, 28 and 8, well, the biggest number that will go into both of those, if you don't know off the top of your head, list the factors for them. So 28, give myself some room here, 1 and 28, 2 and 14, 4 and 7, and then this one for 8, 1 and 8, 2 and 4, and you should see the biggest number they have in common is a 4. So if you can't do it in your head, draw the T. You can still use the T, it's okay. But the only thing these two have in common is a 4, so I'm going to factor that out. And then I'm going to do this row right here, or column right here, so 7x cubed and 28x. Well, the biggest number that will go into both 7 and 28 is going to be a 7. And then for x cubed and x, they have an x in common. And then this column, the 2x squared and the 8, the biggest number that goes into 2 and into 8 is a 2, and that's all they have in common. So my two factors, and you can't just stop here, you now have to write the factors. My two factors are 1x squared plus 4, and my other factor is 7x plus 2. I have 7x plus 2. They're always multiplied together because that's what factors are. They're the two things that multiply to make that thing. So there are your two factors. So let's do example 3 here, and this one I'm going to do using the grouping method. And if you will notice this instruction right here, it says that variables must go from greatest to least. So when you're looking at your variables, you have to look at the exponents, greatest to least exponent. You want to look at your exponents and you want to put them in order from the biggest exponent to the smallest exponent. So if you see, like this one, I have an exponent of 3, an exponent of 2, an exponent of 1, and then no exponent because there's no letter. So this one, if you'll notice, is not in order because I've got an exponent of 3, an exponent of 2, no exponent, and then the 1. So these two need to change places. So I'm going to rewrite this as 2d cubed minus d squared plus 6d minus 3. So now everything's in order, and I'm going to group these two and group these two. So we'll do our t's. This one's really not a big deal. Remember, there's a 1 here. So the factors of 2 are 1 and 2. The factors of 1 are 1 and 1. Then I have 3d's and 2d's. Well, they both have a 1 in common, and they have 2d's in common. So that means I have to factor out a 1d squared, and then what's left is just what's remaining up here. I have a 2 and a d minus a 1. So now I'm going to do this one same way. Change colors again so we don't get all mixed up. So I'm going to draw my t's. Factors of 6 are 1 and 6 and 2 and 3. And the factors of 3 are just 1 and 3, and you'll see 3 is the biggest one they have in common. And that's all they have in common. So I'm going to cross off my pairs I don't need, put my plus sign and my 3, and then what's left was a 2 and a d, and then a minus sign from up here and a 1. And you'll notice my parentheses match, which means I have a factor of 2d minus 1, and then a factor of d squared plus 3. So we will practice this when y'all come to school on Monday. Stay warm and enjoy your weekend.